right, we're live.
Good morning. Welcome to our candidates, to our audience. We thank you for being here today. And so we would just quickly tell you that the League of Women Voters is doing this forum for the District 2 candidates for Peoria City Council. And there are 3 candidates that will be on the ballot as you get ready to go vote. The League is a nonpartisan organization. We don't endorse candidates. We only hold the political forums like this. So you can meet the candidates and hear from them and their positions. The League's purpose is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in their government. I better keep this in the right place, haven't I? So we ask that citizens would be better informed, but they would go and vote. We register voters, but we want you to be acquainted with these candidates and what they would bring to the office of District 2. The League does take positions on issues, but only after we study them from all sides and take a consensus vote. So if you hear that the League backs something you know it's been studied and it has an agreement. So the League is also a membership organization, only as strong as its members. So if you are not a member of the League, please consider joining us. And there are some applications out there. And for you men in the audience, we have men as members these days. We kept the name because it's been around for over 100 years, so we want people to know. But one of our men used to say, we are the men voters of the League of Greater Peoria. So we'll hope you go away from this forum today with more knowledge about what these candidates and their positions bring to the District 2 if they should be elected. You can view this forum and others on YouTube. The League has a YouTube, the League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria. So we welcome you. And Chris Kergard is our moderator this morning. And so I'm going to turn it over to him to lead you and ask the questions.
All right, thank you. And I will just be using this for the introduction, and then I'm going to hand it off to the candidates, and because you will want to hear much more from them than you will from me. As Mary Jane said, I am Chris Kergard. I will be your moderator this morning. I just want to go over a couple of ground rules before we begin. The candidates have agreed in advance to all of these rules. First and foremost, from you, the audience, we understand that you are here to learn more about the candidates. We ask that as you are hearing from the candidates, you engage your listening rather than your speaking during that time. We're going to ask for you to express your opinions simply once at the end when we offer a round of applause for democracy itself. If you have any additional feedback beyond that, though, we would like to hear it through questions that you would like to see asked of the candidates during the forum. If you have any, Connie or others will be going around with note cards that you can write your questions on. They will collect them and pass them up to me. And we ask that those questions be questions that are focused toward all of the candidates so that they all have an equal opportunity to answer and respond to an issue, topic, or position that they may be asked to take on the city council rather than something just for a single candidate. League members have also prepared questions for the forum. Those questions have not been shared with any of the candidates. We have a copy of them right here that I will take out to begin the forum with, and then we will try to work your questions in. We'll go for approximately 1 hour. During that time, you will have a 2-minute opening statement from the candidates, and then we will ask the questions. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond to each question and time for a 1-minute closing statement at the end. We will move in a sequence that's been determined right before the forum by candidates drawing cards for how they're going to sit, but we will rotate through. So the person who offers the beginning opening statement will then give way, after all the opening statements are done, to the next candidate who will respond first to the question, and then the third candidate will respond to the second question first, and so on. So everybody who has a chance to go first, everybody has a chance to finish up answering a question and get fair opportunity that way. I believe that is everything we have to cover beforehand, since I don't see anybody who's sporting a big T-shirt with candidate logos on it. We do ask that nobody pull out any campaign buttons or anything during this. There is a table out front that you passed on your way in and will pass on your way out with candidate literature on it if you wish to pick any of that up. At this point now, we are going to begin to hear from the candidates, starting with 2-minute opening statements. Mr. Carmona, you go first.
Thank you very much. My name is Alex Carmona. I'm a proud second-generation immigrant. My grandparents raised me. I actually call them mom and dad. When I was young, they took me to Mexico to see where they grew up. Their village, the houses that were made of mud and hay. They had dirt floors. And they even showed me the river that they washed their clothes in. And I'm telling you this because these are the people who raised me. They came to America and became middle-class citizens. They love this country, and so do I. Everything I know about hard work, discipline, and honesty came from them. When I was 20, I got married and joined the Air Force. My wife and I just celebrated our 17-year anniversary. We have 3 kids, Alessandra, Felix, and Carmela. And while I was in the Air Force, I also started my art business. And after 10 years of serving, I finally was able to leave when I could pay all my bills with my art. And in 2019, we packed up, moved out of Colorado, and moved here to Peoria. My wife worked for State Farm, and but we didn't choose to live in Bloomington. We chose to live here without knowing a single person. And we could not be more happy with our decision. Okay, sorry. Now, Peoria is a hidden gem. And since we moved here, we've had 3 additional families move here from Colorado after they came to visit us, because they see the same thing that we see, that this is a special community where people care. And I want to be a part of the positive change that happens here. Thank you.
All right. Next, Ms. Diaz.
Oh, well, first off, before I start, I want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters for having us, and also thank you, Mr. Carmona, for your opening statement. But I'm Estrella Diaz. I am a lifelong native to Peoria. I went to Franklin Edison Elementary School, then Rolling Acres Middle School, then Peoria High. During my time, I started volunteer work when I was about 14 years old at St. Mary's Cathedral summer camp. And then afterwards, I volunteered with organizations such as Young Revolution. I'm a co-founder of an organization called Peoria for Palestine. I also work with organizations such as Lula, Jolt, and the Dream Center. And some of my main priorities that I want to tackle if I get elected, is I want to reduce the amount of violence that happens in our city, just because when I was about 14 years old, I lost a classmate to violence. His name was Tommy Forrest III, and I saw how it devastated our community. So I want to do everything in my power to be able to prevent that by implementing programs such as the violence-free zone, starting on a smaller scale and expanding from there. I also want to invest in programs like Market 309, which helps low-income families be able to afford affordable groceries, and my parents benefit from that. And what's shocking is to know that that was one vote away from not existing, which made me realize how vital local elections are. I also want to fund more programs such as Lula, Jolt, and the Dream Center, just because when they are investing in our community, especially the most vulnerable, and they help them to get back on their feet, and those people also continue to help those people back on their feet. So it's just a cycle. I feel as once we invest in the people, we're able to invest in the city and watch it truly thrive. But that's all I have. I am very excited for this, and I'm going to hand it off to Mrs. Wresinski.
No, it's okay. I too want to thank the League of Women Voters, St. Paul, everybody that's here, everybody that's watching. I really appreciate this opportunity to say who I am and just get to know everybody. My name is Krista Wresinski. and running for Peoria City Council District 2. My career has been in public safety. I started off as a correctional officer, then moved to a 911 dispatcher, director, and then when I moved to Central Illinois in 2007, I became a 911 dispatcher. So I've always been wired to serve my community just by the nature of those jobs. Those careers have also given me three things that I think are really vital for City Council. They've allowed me to become a really good problem solver, a really good collaborator, and also a really good communicator. And those are three things that I think are vital for City Council. I think that's vital for getting, the nice thing about local politics is that we're making that connection. We get to know our constituents, we get to know what their wants and their needs are. And so making that connection between that and then the decisions that we're making in City Hall. Couple of things that I'm really looking at. One is safety. I want to work with law enforcement, with legislatures, to keep crime low. But when I look at safety, and it's probably from my 911 side, I don't just look at crime, I look at the holistic approach of it. So I also look at our fire departments, our police departments, making sure they're funded, making sure they have the personnel, the equipment, the technology that they need to get to us as residents or visitors when we need them most. I'm also looking at fiscal responsibility, ensuring that our budget is in check, ensuring that our taxes aren't continually raised. We all know that we have high taxes here in Peoria. So working with our businesses that are already here, making sure that they're flourishing, bringing in new businesses. And I mean, Peoria is a great city. It's a great city to raise a family. It's a great city to live. And I just really look forward to working with everybody to make it an exceptional city.
All right. Thank you all for the opening statements. We're going to begin with our questions now. A reminder, these are all 1-minute answers for the questions, beginning with Ms. Diaz. So let me ask you to begin. What projects or efforts in District 2 have you been involved with or supported or opposed, and the role that you played in those projects or efforts?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, and I feel very lucky. I have a minute. Okay, some of the projects that I worked on is when I was in high school, we had a community cleanup day where we would go around the neighborhoods around Central, and we would pick up the garbage around and recycle and whatnot, and help clean up the area, make it look a little nicer. And I feel, especially in that area, specifically since it is in District 2, it's very important to make it look nice so the residents are happy there. I also, the Dream Center, I help them. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I'm going to pass it off to you.
Ms. Wresinski.
Okay, all right. So for District 2, I've been in District 2 since I've moved to Peoria from Rolling Acres down to the downtown area. So I too have been the Dream Center. I really am passionate about their work and just the work that they do, and really working with businesses too. Since I decided to run as City Council, I've sent out letters to all the businesses in District 2, over 153 letters, wanting to know their input, wanting to know kind of what we can do for them in City Hall to make them continue to thrive in our city.
Okay, Mr. Carmona.
Thank you. As a professional artist, I have been working with the Peoria Art Guild to help teach kids and up-and-coming artists the art of printmaking, what I do. My wife and I also put on a event along with another friend called Art House for the whole community to come see historic homes along with artist studios. Just different ways to try to get the community together. We are also involved in the museum, which is a great place and a great place for young kids to go and nourish their mind with different ideas. And on top of that, I've just unveiled not too long ago a mural I did with Big Picture Peoria that is now over Jackson Adams. And it is a mural that the idea was based on the people of Peoria and the vibes that I get from them. So it's a bunch of people from our city smiling and getting people to move here.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Wresinski will begin the next question. If you advance to the general election and then are elected, you would be succeeding a district council member who has had a very active traditional social media presence to communicate with constituents. I'm interested in hearing from each of you how you would choose to communicate with constituents and what sorts of input you would be seeking from them?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great question, and I really appreciate it. I have my cell phone number out there for everybody. Like, I want to talk to people. I love the idea of doing like coffee once a month. I know another district member has that right now, getting to know constituents, just letting everybody know that I am available. Like, I am here for you. I want to know what your wants are, what your needs are, and let's talk, let's communicate, because that's the best way for everybody to get involved and for me to make good decisions. It's getting my own information, gathering that information, but also hearing from my constituents to see what we can do there for the betterment of District 2 and the city.
All right, Mr. Carmona.
Well, to me, one of the main things about this whole thing that we're doing is creating positive relationships. And although it's going to take a lot of work to get elected and talk to people, to me, if I get in, it's only just going to begin with the hard work, because I won't stop knocking on doors and talking to people the way I am now, because it's very important to get face to face and create real relationships with people in order to allow people to let their guards down and have more difficult conversations. On top of that, I'm very active on social media with my art business. It's the way I conduct business. And I will use technology however I can to see what voters are thinking, what constituents have issues with. And on top of that, holding events as well out in the community and seeing what their needs are, seeing what different issues that they're going through, and just being an honest and real person to everybody. Thank you.
Ms. Diaz.
Oh, thank you. That's a lovely question. Okay, so a couple of ways that I figure to reach out to some of my constituents is meeting them where they're at, just because we've seen time and time again where organizations and people will reach out to council members but not really get any response. So what I want to do is I want to start attending more neighborhood association meetings, hosting regular town halls, getting connected via social media so that we can connect more with the younger demographic of voters and people and constituents. So again, I think mainly my strategy is, again, just meeting people where they are, just because it makes them a bit more comfortable and it'll put them a little bit more at ease and not make it as intimidating if I just allowed them to come to me. But that's the way that I connect with them.
All right, for the next question, we'll begin with Mr. Carmona. And I want to ask each of you, because District 2 has a lengthy legacy of vibrant and active neighborhood associations, what are you hearing are the top priorities of the neighborhood associations in the district?
From what I've been hearing, all of these association meetings are the same thing. It's safety. Safety is one of the essential, if not the most essential function of government. If we cannot create a safe environment for our citizens, then we shouldn't have a government in the first place. If we were all moral and virtuous, then we wouldn't need a government. But we all live in a society together where we have to get along. We have to respect the rule of law, and we have to make sure that our officers are there to help remind people that they need to respect the rule of law. They need to have the best training available to them, the best equipment available to them, in order to themselves create relationships as well, to help the community and to be seen as members that are here to help protect all of us. So safety is always going to be the number one issue when it comes to having and maintaining a polite society.
Yes.
I thought that was a lovely answer. I'm actually going to piggyback off of you, because violence is one of the main concerns that a lot of constituents face. And one of the things that I always say is, with Peoria being the heart of the nation, you heal the heart, you can heal the body. If we pour love into our citizens and we actually take measures such as, I understand the Cure Violence Zone didn't work on the South End, but what I feel, if we model after programs like that, and we implement also the violence-free zone on a smaller scale, I feel as though we can see what works for us, what doesn't, go from there and grow from there. And by doing so, I think little by little, we can reduce the amount of violence in Peoria, as well as getting to the root causes of it and helping to make our people feel more safe and secure in the city that they could love and call home.
All right, Ms. Wresinski.
So the great thing about District 2 is we have a lot of neighborhood associations. And so what I have found throughout the different neighborhoods is that it is safety. It's different kinds of safety depending on which area it is. And so that's kind of where I want to make sure that we're meeting each neighborhood where they're at. If it's lighting, if it's, what exactly what's happening in your neighborhood, and how can we as the city work with, again, law enforcement, even fire departments, things like that, to make sure that everybody feels safe at home. They're walking through neighborhoods, whatever, just doing what we can there.
All right, next question, we're going to begin with Ms. Diaz, and I'm going to pivot a little bit into something that was of significant interest to District 2 over the last several years. The city put in a lot of time over the last 4 years dealing with short-term rental permitting, Airbnb and Verbo homes. Did the city get it right on those rules? And what have you heard from the neighborhoods that you would represent about the current regulations?
Currently, okay, I feel like we could do a little bit better with that just because I have heard complaints from the citizens and the residents that live in these areas. I feel as though we can take a better approach. Although I may not have the exact answers for this, I will look further into this so that I can provide a proper answer to you instead of just pulling something out of nowhere. I want to be able to give you the right answer or the correct answer that I believe would be. But yeah, I just want to be able to give you guys and do you guys justice. So just gonna pass it off.
Ms. Wresinski.
So I think when it comes to short-term rentals, it was a little, anytime we implement something new, there's going to be some growing pains, and there was definitely some of that. I think that now there's a system in place, and I think that, whether you're an investor, whether you're somebody that you have your home, but maybe you're not there for part of the time, and so you want to use part of it, there's a system in place now where you at least know the process and you know the expectations, and so that I can appreciate.
All right, Mr. Carmona.
The issue on short-term rentals is an interesting one because when it got implemented, you are required to get a permit to have an Airbnb, VRBO, what have you. But one of the things our city forgot when they implemented these rules is that when you have issues like shared driveways and things like that in certain houses, how does that affect your neighbor? And so I think that the city has done the right thing in correcting these matters because I was involved in going and listening to one of my neighbor's issues when she had this. She's an elderly woman and she didn't feel safe because there was different cars in her shared driveway over and over and over. And so I do understand that from a neighborly perspective. Also, we are all adults, and consenting adults, if your neighbor asks you if they can have a Airbnb short-term rental, and you get permission from all your surrounding neighbors, then I don't think the government should be stepping in and telling you that you can't do that. Thank you.
All right, next question will begin with Mrs. Wresinski, and District 2's boundaries have changed since the last election, and it includes the downtown coming right up into the warehouse district. So I'd like to know what your priorities are for that downtown into the warehouse district area.
Yeah, so we have a beautiful downtown. Like, our downtown is gorgeous, and I see so much potential in there. We have the Civic Center down there. As far as it goes to District 2, you have, where Rhythm Kitchen is, where all of that, the Gateway Building, all of that. And I want to get with those businesses down there. They're the ones that are down there. They're the ones that see what the needs are. They're in it. And so I want to get with them. Again, one of the reasons that I send out all my letters and see what can we do to make this even better, because you can see the potential. Anybody that goes down there can see it. So.
Mr. Carmona.
Sorry. Okay.
The downtown area is one of the things that drew us here. It is so beautiful and it is primed for absolute growth. If you see what's happening along across the river, this potential can happen right in our downtown. The government is not the one that's going to do this, though. It's going to be the free market. We have to allow businesses to conduct business here in an easier way. If it's the permitting process that's taken too long, if it's arbitrary regulations that are stifling growth. We have to take a serious look at the rules that we have here arbitrarily, because we already have a lot of federal regulations that we must abide by. And so when you add on to those, the result of it is if you have an attitude of don't say yes, it's always no, we need to adopt an attitude of how can we make this happen? How can we make this easier for you, whether you understand the permitting process or not? We need to make it easier for businesses to bring jobs here.
Okay, Ms. Diaz.
Oh, well, in a perfect world, if there was no issues, I would revitalize it. I would have it be a cultural hub. I mean, back in the day, we had the saying, will and play in Peoria, meaning if it was successful in Peoria, then it was successful everywhere. We represented the everyday average American. So just getting different opinions from our constituents, because we have very creative people here, and to see their vision, such as Mr. Carmona with his mural downtown, we can have these kind of contributions, but that isn't a perfect world. So we must first tackle these root causes, such as violence and the unhoused, before we ever try to fully revitalize downtown, just because if we kind of just slap a Band-Aid on it, we're not really doing anything. These issues are going to keep reoccurring. So I feel we must tackle those issues before doing anything in regards to revitalizing it.
All right, and we'll go to the next question, starting with Mr. Carmona.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to kind of flip the script on this question. I just asked you about downtown, and the warehouse district in the city has spent much of the past 20 years focusing its infrastructure efforts on that area. I'd like to know what you think the city should do over the next decade to focus on revitalizing core neighborhoods in District 2, such as the one that we're in now.
Well, there's several different things you can do, that a city can do, to revitalize neighborhoods. Some neighborhoods benefit off of TIF, the TIF model, tax incremental financing, where you are allowed to basically invest into your home without having property taxes go up on you. The TIF fund will help you do these types of things. So as a city, I think that we should definitely look around and allocate resources for projects like this very responsibly, and just listen to people and see where the most needs are and how those are to be solved.
All right, Ms. Diaz. Yes.
Can you repeat the question just one more time?
All right. The city has spent most of the past 20 years focusing on development and infrastructure in the downtown and the warehouse district area. Over the next decade, what do you think the city ought to be doing to focus on revitalizing core neighborhoods like the one that we're at the edge of here?
Okay, perfect. So my idea is what the city can be doing is going after these neighborhoods that they have been unforgotten, such as the street that I live on, University and McQueen. If you go down that road, there's these weird things on the streets. They're like speed humps, but they're not speed humps. They've been there for what seems like years. It's just, it needs to be looked at, and it's been overlooked for so long. So I feel like going after these neighborhoods who have been overlooked and beautifying them, not necessarily saying that we want to burden the taxpayers, but we can reallocate the funds to be able to beautify these neighborhoods. But not only that, we can implement the violence-free zone in those areas. So not only will we make the area look nice, but we can make it a little bit safer, also providing business incentives for businesses that do invest in these areas. And so little by little, we'll make the city look nice and thrive, but it's going to take time.
And Ms. Wresinski.
So I definitely agree. It's tough when you buy a house, you make improvements on the outside of it, and then all of a sudden your mortgage has jumped because now your property value is higher, and so your taxes in turn are higher. So I agree wholeheartedly that having something like that, an incentive to do things like that. You know, the city right now, we have grants available for a new roof, we have grants available for new windows, things like that, which are great for these homes, and especially those that are on fixed incomes. To be able to maintain their homes and keep them well. But then when you in turn, now your taxes are higher, that's kind of not great for those homeowners. So I think working with, again, those grants that are already out there that we have, and then working through taxes. So we're just not penalizing people really for beautifying their homes and really just maintaining them.
All right, move on to the next question, starting with Ms. Diaz. And I'm going to combine a couple of questions that we've received from the audience on this one. I'd like you to talk about what you think the city can do, particularly in its budget constraints, to address both the root causes of homelessness and what you think the city should be looking at for longer-term solutions for the unhoused.
So perfect. The way that we can balance it out is, we don't need tons of money. We can do a lot with a little. I mean, that's the value that my parents instilled in me. All we really need is I work with the stakeholders who are helping out with the unhoused issue. And yes, it might cost a little bit, but again, we want to balance not costing too much. If we are to get the community support, it doesn't cost as much just because everyone's putting a helping hand in. And it's not just solely focused on one specific person. But I feel like what the city should do is we need to talk with Rockford because they were able to reduce the amount of unhoused people in their area. And if we are to ask the experts such as them and people who are on the ground such as Lula and the Dream Center in Phoenix, then we can definitely find solutions long term.
All right, Ms. Wresinski.
So I have to say that we have some of the greatest nonprofits and social services here in Peoria. And I really think that working with them and figuring out how do we get people to you, like how do we get people to you so they can get that job training, so they can get, some of them job training is an option, but there are services out there for them. So how do we get them plugged in, or how does your nonprofit get them plugged in? I think that is an essential thing. I like the idea of functional zero homelessness. It doesn't mean that homelessness doesn't exist, because that's not really possible. That's always going to be a thing. But taking it to functional zero, where we can get those that are experiencing it out of it as quickly as possible, is something that is definitely a good goal to have.
Mr. Carmona.
Well, I think we could all agree that as citizens, it would be best if we could help people get back to sovereign, independent, and productive members of our community. And this is a very complex issue that will require our local government, along with all these nonprofits and different people that want to help with this, to solve this issue or to help improve it. There's 4 main things that we need to consider, and they're all very hard for any government to do. First one is stable housing. The second one is stable jobs. And the third one is a continuum of care that is tailor-made to each individual's specific needs. And whether it's psychological, emotional, addiction, and as if those 3 things weren't hard enough for any government to solve or help, the last one is that it has to be completely voluntary, because no change can actually be made unless it's voluntary. And this is a problem that we're always going to have. But I think coming together as a community, we can solve it.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Wresinski. If again, you advance the general election and then are elected, you would join the council at the beginning of May, which is about 2 months before the city starts worrying about its budget for the following year. There has not been an easy budget in the city of Peoria in decades. And this year, as federal funding, American Rescue Plan funds are no longer in the picture, and the state is experiencing some fiscal pullback, it's likely to be a difficult budget. So what are 3 things you would prioritize to move Peoria toward a more fiscally responsible mindset?
Sure, that's a great question. I think first we have to make sure that we are not continually raising taxes. That can't be a thing anymore. We can't continue to burden, that's a heavy burden to put on our residents. And so I feel like working with the businesses that we already have in place, asking them those questions of what can we do to help you stay and do better? And then what can we do, what tax incentives, what can we do to bring other businesses here that will bring jobs here, that will bring people here? So kind of all of those moving parts, but we have got to not make sure it's on the backs of our citizens by raising taxes. Like has to be an essential thing for our city.
Mr. Carmona.
Thank you. The first thing we need to focus on is absolutely safety. And once we can kind of get that in control, we have to make sure that we get people to stay here and invest here, invest their time and their family here, and try to get people to move back to Peoria or to Peoria from other locations. We've lost 5,000 plus citizens since 2010, according to US Census data, and it's going to continue to get worse if we don't minimize the burden it costs just to live here. Because on top of being the highest, the city with the highest property taxes in the nation now, we also have other fees on top of that that make it hard. The stormwater utility fee, we can call it a fee if we want, but it's nothing more than a tax. These two things combined put us miles ahead of the next city as far as the burden that it costs just to live here. We need to look at these things seriously and incentivize people and businesses to move back here and to help the city grow.
Ms. Diaz.
Thank you. I know I'm going to ask you again. Can you repeat the question?
All right, I will briefly summarize it,
Okay.
but city budgets have long been difficult, and it's unlikely that new federal money or additional state money is going to be earmarked to help the city out with any of that. What are 3 things that you would do to help ensure Peoria remains fiscally responsible?
All right. No, my opponent said it perfectly themselves. I know we don't need to be burdening the citizens anymore with raising taxes. So what we need to be doing is we need to be reallocating the funds to things that matter most, such as safety. And by doing those, yes, we might have some cuts, but thankfully, Peoria is a city where community is very important, where we can probably get programs with volunteer work, with religious organizations, nonprofits, to be able to cover those programs that we may not be funding. So instead of it being more on the taxpayers, we can reallocate these funds and make it better for everyone. So it's not too much on people, but it works for government. So yeah.
All right, next question, beginning with Mr. Carmona. And since we're talking about budgets and an overarching issue here has been focusing on safety in our neighborhoods, I'd like to know, given, again, those budget constraints and the focus that we've all had on safety, what would you like to see the city do by way of focusing on mental health efforts in the community?
Well, the city on its own, or any government really, does not solve problems for people. We have to create the incentive for a business to come here and be able to help citizens who need help. We need professionals to come in and do this. And so we have several of these things that are starting to come up now, and they're going to be absolutely required if we want to help solve things like homelessness. We're living in an age right now, in a society right now, where mental health is everywhere. And we absolutely need professionals to come in here and do that. Now, with our budgetary restraints and everything that we see coming down the road, the question is always going to be who's going to pay for it. So we have to partner with the industries that we have here already, and work with them to see how we expand their scope and help them make it easier for them to do this.
All right, Ms. Diaz.
Thank you. I believe mental health is very important, just because when I was about 12 years old, I had a friend who committed suicide. So mental health will be a main priority for me. I think programs such as the co-responder program that we implemented is a great program to keep around and to see how it's working, just because it has given people privacy who are going through crisis mode and who don't necessarily need the wrong sort of services to come and help them, but people who are going to understand them, such as social service workers. I think we need to look at programs such as Jesse McGowan's Popsicle program, where he's fostering relationships with these children. And I feel, again, if we are to invest in the people, if we are to truly take care of them and help them, then we will have that be a ripple effect and a cycle overall.
Okay, and Ms. Wresinski.
So the great thing about Peoria is we're a healthcare hub. We have two big, we have Carl, we have OSF here, and we just opened up Trillium Place. There's a lot of good resources here, but we do need more. There can never be too much. So I think just making sure that we don't there aren't barriers in the way for those places that know mental health best to be able to open up the facilities that they know are best for our community to get the people the help they need and make it easily accessible. Because when people are in crisis, they need it now. They're not in crisis now and, oh, well, there's a 2-week waiting list. So making sure that all of that is in place and that we aren't setting up any roadblocks for them to get that there.
All right, now, next question, we will move on, beginning with Ms. Diaz. And we're going to sort of focus these next couple of questions on, we'll call it the changing face of our neighborhoods. There are a lot of homes in established neighborhoods within District 2 in particular that are being purchased by people who intend to rent those out to others rather than being owner-occupied homes. This is changing some of the face of the neighborhoods, and one of the challenges with fewer owner-occupied homes are addressing code violations in those areas. And in some areas, the city's code enforcement department is overburdened. How would you address that if you were a member of the city council?
Well, especially if we're overburdened, look at the cases that have been far overlooked for way too long, just because we shouldn't have people waiting too long just so that they can be able to live in a place where it's not up to par. I mean, we've seen this with businesses such as the basket case on Main Street where they have complaints, but yet there's nothing being done from the landlord. So I think holding landlords accountable, although we do want to get more people in here, seeing time and time again that these places aren't up to par, it's disheartening because people are struggling already as is. Why burden them with, making them pay such high pricing, especially, and not, making it to what they're paying. It's not up to that. But yeah, that's pretty much all that I have.
Ms. Wresinski,
Okay.
yes.
So the question is,
The city, particularly in neighborhoods where you're seeing more rental homes, how do you address an overburdened code enforcement department and make sure the neighborhood stays vibrant?
I would say just making sure that the code department has what they need in their budget to continue on. I mean, yeah, I would say like making sure the code, like people have to have good houses. Like you can't rent. That's why we have code enforcement. And that is the job. One of the jobs of the government is to make sure that people are living in houses that don't have roofs that are caving in, that don't, there's certain criteria that must be met when it comes to that. So I would say just making sure that they have the staff that they need, that they have this, do they need more equipment? Do they need drones to help out with those? Like what is it that they need? And then they come to us and then we discuss it.
All right, Mr. Carmona.
I think not only everything that goes into code enforcement, but all other regulations, we should really look into and see which ones are overly burdensome and which ones we should absolutely prioritize. When we have few resources, we need to aim at the ones that are impacting citizens the most. So although we do have obviously a budgetary issue that's going on, and if we don't have personnel to follow up on every little thing that citizens are doing, then we need to look and see which one of these are actually important to have and which one of these aren't. And aside from that, there's not really much more we could do because it's just going to take more government money, more taxpayer dollars to add more code enforcers that are there checking on citizens, seeing what they're doing, seeing what they're not doing. But a lot of this also is complaint driven. So us as a community, we need to see, hey, does my neighbor need help mowing the lawn? Can we be a better neighbor to each other?
All right. Thank you. Ms. Wresinski, we'll start the next question with you. For those of you following along in the audience, and hopefully you're not looking at the clock because I think we're getting some good discussion in, but we are down to our final 2 or 3 questions before closing statements. So the question again, focusing on our neighborhoods, if elected, you would represent part of the Bradley University neighborhood, but the school's enrollment has cratered in the last several years, and with other changes there focusing on more online classes and fewer college students overall entering the pipeline, It's likely to bring challenges of fewer professors living nearby in owner-occupied homes and many fewer student renters in those neighborhoods. Crime has also increased in that area over the past 10 years or so. What would you do to keep the vitality of that area around Bradley?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Bradley is a decent part of District 2, and it's a decent part of our city. I would look to really just all the things that we've already discussed, making sure that we have safe neighborhoods, making sure like that's going to bring people in, making sure that the neighborhoods are well kept, making good choices, not having those tax burdens, not somebody looking at Peoria and being like, wow, this is a really nice house, but the taxes are really, really high here. I think I should go somewhere else. So just making our city better so we get people here, and then the people that do come here from Bradley, that they stay here, that we retain them, and that they continue to serve our community.
All right, Mr. Carmona.
Well, online teaching is changing a lot of things, but the college experience is something that's great that kids look forward to. And coming from college town myself, and everything that popped up around college towns was cool restaurants, cool businesses, easy walkability. That Main Street corridor there right by Bradley needs to be revamped. We need to make it easy for businesses to come in there. That way, these kids want to come here and have a walkability, and not only just for them, but for the whole community. So again, if we can make it easier for businesses to come in here and not be so hard on regulations and saying no to things, we could create a vibrant community everywhere, not just for Bradley, but throughout the whole city. So I know as a young person that people like dynamic economies where there's all kinds of different stuff for you to choose from. A better array of goods and services is going to be better for everybody.
All right, and Ms. Diaz.
Perfect. I'm going to sound like a broken record. Addressing the root causes will definitely help benefit to bring in more people, keep people on Main Street and Bradley. But like Mr. Carmona was saying, we do need to bring forth or, have more businesses and he didn't say incentivize businesses, but I'm going to say incentivize businesses just because if we are to have more businesses there after addressing the root causes, then it would become more vibrant for people, especially minority-owned businesses and immigrant-owned businesses, just because, again, if we are the heart of the nation, we represent kind of America as a whole because we represent the everyday average American. And if we are to have things that give you a little bit of taste of different cultures in different parts of the world in just this one area, I definitely feel as we can attract more people in that way.
All right, Mr. Carmona, next question. We'll start with you, and we're going to stay both in the Bradley University neighborhood and with our friends downtown for this one. And along with District 1, your territory covers part of West Main Street. Tens of millions of dollars in state funds have been identified, but not yet provided after 7 years to bring redevelopment to West Main Street. First, what else can the city do to get the state to pay out those funds? And second, what would be your specific priorities there for the road and the businesses that operate on it?
Well, first, if we were told that these funds were allocated to us, I'm wondering why they haven't been deposited or given and promises made. We need to hold the people accountable who said that this was going to happen for us. This is going to be great for our community. One of the biggest issues for Bradley and for Maine is the intersection that everybody loves to avoid. That intersection that everybody knows. I live on Moss Avenue, my friends in the uplands. Our traffic there is destroying our little communities we have there in our neighborhood. People are speeding through there. It is not safe for our kids to play outside. That intersection right there, I haven't lived here for very long, but I heard Main Street used to be Main Street, where there was a lot of businesses. Yes, there was traffic, but Main Street needs traffic. They need people driving by businesses. Main Street doesn't need avoidance. We need to revamp that intersection so people no longer avoid it, and so businesses like Avanti's don't close due to it.
Ms. Diaz.
Okay, just repeat it just one more time, just so
All right,
that I can give a proper answer.
Yep, the state has promised but not yet allocated millions of dollars to rebuild Main Street. First, what else can the city do to get the state to pay out that money as part of its capital improvement plan? And what are your priorities for the road and the businesses on it?
Okay, I think if I'm elected as your city council member, I'm going to fight to be able to get those funds, just because, like Mr. Carmona said, you can't just withhold those fundings if it was, if it was designated to for a specific purpose. So I don't necessarily think it's fair to just withhold those funds because they were meant for a purpose. As in regards to fixing up the roads there, it does get a little bit busy. And I will look more into this just because I don't want to, again, I want to be able to give proper answers instead of just automatically pulling anything out of nowhere. So.
Ms. Wresinski.
Yeah, so I love this question because my backyard is Main Street. My backyard is that top of the hill there where I look out and I can see potential. I see the tens of $millions that we've been told that we were going to be getting for Main Street, and I think, wow, that could really do a lot of good there. There's a lot of businesses in my backyard and my neighbors' backyards that are all for sale there. So kind of finding out what do we need to do as a city to get good businesses in there, to develop those areas, and to make it someplace that, yeah, when when parents and students come to visit the Bradley campus, they're like, wow, this is a really great place. Like, this is a very walkable place. My child could, I'm dropping off my 18-year-old child in the city. They could walk here, they could do this, they could do that, and just kind of, finding out where that money is and then what we can do in the meantime to get good businesses in there and good redevelopment.
Okay. And Ms. Diaz, we will start the next question with you. It looks like we probably have time for two more and then go to closing statements. So I'm going to ask you this. At Illinois American Water, which is the utility that handles water service in Peoria, is not going to be receiving any of the federal money to repair lead service lines in the city. That cost will instead be borne by ratepayers. So is there anything you can do on the city council to help mitigate that and see those lines repaired?
Okay. What I can do is I think we need to communicate with those people so that we keep transparency about what's going on in regards to what the city can do. We can try to allocate funds to see what we can do to less burden the taxpayers. And by doing that, then we can see how we can not necessarily fix the entire issue because it's going to be a bit complex to fix, but to do anything in our power to lessen so that the taxpayers aren't paying as much.
All right. Ms. Wresinski.
So I would say that whether American Water says that they're going to pay for it or not, like we would end up paying for it as the ones that are paying our bills to American Water that are writing the checks or paying automatically every month. We're the ones that are going to be paying for it. So just kind of seeing what are those costs, what needs to be done, and then how can we do it? Like, how do we execute that and execute it well? So once again, our citizens, our residents, our businesses, even because they pay water bills too, are not taking that burden on them. Like, it just can't continue.
All right, Mr. Carmona.
The reality of this issue is that this will fall on the taxpayer, like everything else does. I think that we need to take a hard and honest look at what we are allocating funds to as a city and make sure that our core functions are being met first. And all these other things such as lead pipes or pension funding or the array of other issues that we absolutely have in our city, we have to be able to prioritize those before anything else. Our government is here to keep us safe and to provide core services for us. If it's doing things outside of that scope, we need to really ask ourselves why, and if it's worth the trade-off of continuing to raise our taxes for these services. So for me, I would love the government to really look in the mirror and ask itself if it's doing its best to spend the taxpayer dollars as responsibly as it can.
All right, we'll start our final question with Ms. Wresinski. we got kind of a flavor at the beginning of the forum when you introduced yourselves as to your background and some of the things that you'd like to focus on. More than half the questions today have actually come from voters in the audience rather than anything we pre-prepared. So I would like you to distill for us at the end your top 3 policy priorities if you're elected to the council. And those have changed from the beginning to the end.
And we
We'd
have
love to
60
know that
seconds
too.
for that?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That
You
sounds fair.
can always roll this over in the conclusions too if you got anything you gotta, when that comes around.
To be continued. Okay. Give me a second. Okay, top 3. Here we go. First is obviously going to be safety. We have to be safe, but again, that safety is a holistic approach. It's working with law enforcement, it's working with legislatures, it's also working with fire and police departments, making sure that everybody has what they need. It's fiscal responsibility, it's transparency. What are we spending our money on and why? And is that actually the function of the government? Is that something that we should be doing? The other thing that I think is just really looming over us right now is the pension, is the firefighter and the police pension. We have until 2040 to get that funded, and it is just looming over us. That is a big budget item right now, and it will be, and it's going to continue to be. So I think working with those pension unions and working with the state, not just to kick the can and say, oh, let's make it till 2050, but actually find a solution to what we can do.
All right. Mr. Carmona.
Our core policies of having to do with safety absolutely have to come first. Second, we have to try to find a way to reform how hard it is to live here based on taxation. Taxes create incentives, whether they're good or bad. We're incentivizing people to leave. We're incentivizing businesses to take their jobs and their tax dollars away. We have to have some sort of reform in this way. And the third one would also be to incentivize businesses, not by giving them tax dollars, but by making it easier for them to conduct business. So we need to reform the arbitrary regulations that are making it too hard to do business and have East Peoria steal all the business from us. We need to make it easy for not just big box businesses to do business here, but local places that do business here. That way we have a very dynamic and thriving economy that we can all appreciate.
All right. Ms. Diaz.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm very blessed to be going against these two, just because I feel like we kind of have similar visions, but going in different approaches. But some of the things that I would like to work on, as you know, public safety, just because I grew up in the city and I love the city, and to see the direction it's taking, it's very disheartening. And I want to be able to pour the love that was poured into me back into the city. I also want to help out with housing insecurity, since I do come from a low-income family, and I've been in one ever since I've grew up. And I want to also help out with the food deserts that do take place in District 2. I feel as focusing on the areas that have been overlooked for so long, once we allow those places to thrive, along with like implementing the violence-free zone, that we are able to thrive as a city, because we shouldn't be able to be okay with revitalizing certain areas while leaving others abandoned. I don't feel like anybody should be getting left behind. I also want to, once dealing with those, as Krista said, fiscal responsibility, knowing where our money, where the taxpayers' money is going. But also, once we deal with those issues, we are able to bring in economic development into and.
Thank you. All right, we will now move to closing statements, beginning with Mr. Carmona and working our way down the line. So in 1 minute, tell us your concluding thoughts and why we should support you in this election. Then we'll have a couple concluding thoughts before we end. So.
Thank you. In conclusion, I am running for this position, and this is real, because my kids are getting older. My daughter's learning how to drive. We have taken our kids to all kinds of different places around this country, and they know what's around. As they get older, I want them to stay here. I want them to love Peoria. They do love Peoria, but I want them to grow their family here and stay close to home as much as possible. I'm not a politician. I am a real, honest person that is doing this for the right reasons, because I want this community to get better. I think that if we all create positive relationships with each other on the council, with city staff, and as community members, then we can solve a ton of problems. But you have to look in the mirror too and and be honest with yourself and tell yourself that you do have problems and they do need to be solved. And I think that if we can all come together and look at these things honestly, then you can make real change here. Thank you.
Ms. Diaz.
Well, the reason why you should support me is, well, take a chance on me. You never know what you can expect. Like Mr. Carmona himself, I'm not a politician. But I did grow up in the city, and I've seen the many different phases of Peoria, and Peoria has seen the many different phases of me. So I have a deep connection with Peoria, and I just love the city. I have about 11 nieces and nephews, and again, I think it just all goes back to the challenges I face, and I don't want them to go through that. And I know that parents and families also have the same fears. Even though I'm not a parent myself, I can only imagine the fear that they feel. So just being able to do what I can, and again, with Peoria being the heart of the nation, I want to be able to make a difference here. If I can make just even a small difference, I want to be able to do that.
All right. And Ms. Wresinski.
So none of us are politicians up here. That is a fact. And we all love this city. We all love Peoria. You don't run for city council if you don't love your community that you're in. And so I think that what I bring to the table is I am a problem solver, I am a collaborator, and I am a communicator. And those are all three things that the people of Peoria deserve in their city council members and in their city council. And that's how the city runs effectively and efficiently. So I urge everybody to call me, text me, get to know me. I want to get to know you. And then obviously make sure you get out and vote for the primary and the general election.
All right, we appreciate all the candidates being here for this. As you know, probably already if you are here, the primary election is February 25th, and early voting is open and available now for that, so you can cast your ballot as soon as you would like for this election. We will have a forum between the two winners of this primary election in March. There will be more information on that available through the league and on the league's social media, as well as advertised elsewhere throughout the district. We also encourage you to pay attention to all of the other forums that we have for races that are on the ballot, both in the primary and the general election, the next of which is the mayoral candidate primary forum that will be aired on WTVP and WCBU later this coming week. Followed by other races for Peoria City Treasurer's primary next weekend, the District 1 general election forum next weekend, and a third one that I'm not, the Park District, Southern District Board next weekend. There's a whole series of them with a calendar outside that you can take a look at for when those are being held. Unless there is any other business, we will conclude as we always do by offering all of the candidates and democracy a round of applause. All right, go vote.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
That was a good offer, because I have done these candidate forums for years.